Good evening, everyone. Hope you all had a wonderful and safe trading day. Let's take a look and see what's going on with Bitcoin. So, it did what I didn't want it to do, or I wasn't really truly expecting, but I had a feeling it might happen. We got definitely a much bigger bearish close than yesterday. Kind of made a swing high, unfortunately. We did close right above weekly open. So our close was around 63,800 and our high was 64,978. Definitely more of a bearish close. I was hoping that, because we had such a nice candle on Tuesday, that we would have a continuation kind of pattern to the upside. Obviously Wednesday we kind of topped out. And I did warn you guys that this might be the high of the week. I remember saying around, 65,571. But it does look like, unfortunately, that we are making some lows now here. That being said, I am still I'm still open-minded that, before we start talking about the 62 area and fulfilling this order block, we could bounce off the top of it potentially. We could bounce off of the 63 265. I'm not 100% dead set on any of these areas just yet. It's choppy summer price action, extremely difficult to trade, again, to sync with. Definitely a much more difficult month right now. Taking a look at the 12-hour, yeah, I mean, price does look like it's heading towards that 63. I would say we would test 63 265, see if we can get a bullish 786 off of that, and maybe come back up into the 64,000 range. Um, but we're gonna have to wait and see. This is definitely something where if you're convicted that we're going to go up, you definitely want to wait for a bottom to start forming, because this is kind of going to be kind of a free fall, it looks like, especially because we're now getting below weekly open. That was my last kind of support level before we start visiting like 63 265, like I said, or even 62 837, which was that Monday midnight weekly open. We could possibly revisit as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Taking a look, I was really frustrated with this 6 hour. I was really thinking that we were going to get that golden cross, and we still might. It might be trying to get the 50 in sync and getting everything tight, but it's just really not a good sign that we're not closing, consistent candles above it, right? This is just not what we wanted to see for a bullish move. And so now that we're losing, the 6 hour, we're keeping the 4 hour, 200 for right now. And as long as, I would say if we lose the 1 hour 200 MA, you go to the 2 hour, which is right around the same area. So basically, what it's saying is if you lose this 1 hour 200 MA, which is basically weekly open, you're going to come and test this Monday midnight open at 62. It looks like it's 62,798 would be the area. So about 62,800, which is where the 2 hour and the 4 hour 200 MA is. This is where I would want to see a bounce at the very most. If we start losing that, then you got to say, okay, well, let's take out this double bottom right here at 61.8. Then you can get into the 60s, which I know on the 4 hour there's liquidity down here. It's around 60,622. So then you're, looking at testing this order block right here. It's just going to become a mess. And it's basically a slanted head and shoulders, is what it looks like right now on the 4 hour. So definitely not what we're trying to see here for a bullish move up. It's giving more of an accumulation kind of pattern. We could be bottoming and it could do the same, stuff for next month as well. But yeah, it's definitely something where you want to wait for long entries, right? I'm personally not doing shorts. I'm only looking for longs, but this is just a mess. Like this is frustrating, and it doesn't follow any rules whatsoever. At least from what I've learned. Um, so it does look like we're gonna probably lose this 200, get the golden cross here, or death cross, I should say, to the downside. If you flip this upside down, you'd be playing that bullishly, right? So definitely looks like we're gonna get, at least probably to 62,798 would be my guess. So we'll keep that 62,800 number in mind. We'll see kind of how liquidity lines up with that. But hopefully we can maybe get a bounce off of it if that were the case. One thing to keep in mind though is on the weekly, you know, now you got to say that we got to stay above this 200 MA, right? If we lose 63,069 and we close below that, that is going to be a recipe for disaster for the bulls. Basically, that's going to pretty much solidify that there's a good chance that we're going to go down lower and back into the 50s and possibly taking out this double bottom at 58,000. Just not what we want to see, right? So from a bigger picture perspective, we want to hold 63,069 or basically 63,000 even about. So let's go ahead and take a look at liquidity now. All right, so taking a look at liquidity, I am targeting at the very most. We could potentially be, this is obviously that 62 area I was talking about, right? So 62.4 it looks like is where it stops, 62.450-ish. But, obviously worst case scenario, maybe getting a bounce in the 60,000 area, 60,600-ish area is possible, okay? So, we may have to come down here, wreck some of these longs before we take out this at 66,544. You have orders on Kiyotaka down, to that 62 area. Nothing really to lead us down into the 60,000 range just yet, but you do have some to lead us into that 62 area that we're talking about, which would be this area of liquidity right here, basically taking this out and bouncing from there. Um, your 1 hour, so your 1 hour. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of showing the same thing, right? It's showing that we can easily take this out. We can also come down, take this red area out around 61 even. Um, so just kind of be mindful of that, guys. I mean, the problem with, putting a limit here, I mean, it could definitely work out, but now you're nearing the end of the week. So, you would have to assume that at the most, maybe you get back into the 64 range, which would be a decent move up. And I would want that, right? If we're going to have, if the bulls are basically back and we're going to start having a bullish move on the bigger macro time frames, you're going to want to get a bounce off of this. Because if you don't get a bounce off of this, then that means that the weekly 200 MA is getting rejected once again, and then now you gotta assume that we're gonna go even lower and taking some of this stuff out. Okay. So, getting into here, this could be definitely a good play. Just keep in mind it's getting into the weekend now. So you're, talking about tomorrow, which is Friday, going into the weekend, and you're just, you're not going to be really expecting movement like you would with a Fed folder, like what we saw earlier this week, okay, like on Tuesday. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're, playing even these bigger time frames for the rest of the week. You know, we do want to see 63,000 hold. However, this could be a bounce area. It's just that it could potentially even fall further into the 61K area. Um, One decent thing is you do have some orders into the 65, getting up into 65 even also. So, on Kiyotaka, these are there. So it does kind of allude to the fact that we could get a bounce and maybe have it react quite nicely. But, until then, because these orders are so close, we have to assume that we're going to keep taking this out until we don't, right? Taking a look at the 15 minute kind of showing the same thing. Let me increase the aggregation kind of. Okay, it already is increased. Let me decrease it then. Let's see what it looks like here. Put it back to what I'm used to here for the most part. Yeah, so it does look like, 62. This is saying 63 even. This takes you down to 63 even. If we were to check off the 25x, it tells you get down to 62.4, which is what we've been targeting. So yeah, guys, I mean, we either bounce here or we drop down into the 62.4-ish area. It's pretty much that simple. So if you have conviction that we're going to bounce from here, then, you could potentially put in a very, very extremely high risk long. But Trendif is telling you that the hourly is extremely bearish. It's at a -3, and you're about to get that that death cross on the hourly to the downside. So my assumption currently and my bias is that we're going to go down. Okay. And how far we go is up in the air still. I would be targeting 62.5 myself if I were to short this. You kind of have a descending triangle type of vibe here. You know, kind of this triangle-ish pattern here. And it looks like you're even breaking out of it right now. But yeah, I mean, I would be targeting 62.4, 62.5-ish, before we get a possible bounce for right now. With that being said, let's take a look at the simple map. So the simple map, let's see here. Yeah, so I mean, look at this, guys. You're starting to get into this real deep liquidity here to the downside. So definitely shows that you could possibly get to 63.2. Following through would get you to about 63,000. You start getting down into this level. It doesn't look like you have another resistance point until 62,520-ish, if you get through all of these different gaps here. Definitely you have some to the upside, but just not enough to really drive price up, in my opinion, just yet. You definitely want to build up more shorts to the upside to allow for, price to want to move upward, right? But this is looking really juicy for the shorts here to eat up, right? Taking a look at our swing time frames, so kind of painting the same narrative, right? Looking down, you can see how we can get into the 62.5 area. We take all of this nice juicy liquidity out. Multi-millions of orders in here. So, we just started getting into it. So definitely does show that we could be taking this out before we're getting that bounce. Especially because we need to build up that upside liquidity. So for right now, honestly, guys, to the upside, I'd be targeting about 64.5. I think that was like a bearish 76 that I measured earlier. To the downside, I'm targeting about 62.4 to 62.5 for us to possibly get that bounce. So, with that being said, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. As usual, if you want to use Trading Different and you want a little bit of a discount there, you can use my code Sean to get 10% off of your entire order to help you with your trading and figuring out bias. But, anyways, guys, I'm going to leave you with that. And I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you in the morning. Take care.